paar hembroer hadden nog dingen.
Absolute nightmare in Switzerland for the village of Blatten. It has been overrun by a rockfall / glacier. It all came down at once and has buried the village underneath, has then blocked the river. A large lake has formed, and now the last homes that were still visible in the videos that we received this morning are now also gone. They're flooded. It's devastating for the people. Some of the people that were evacuated, I mean, they have been, thankfully, the officials did an absolute fantastic job. They have seen the danger and they have evacuated in time, days before the disaster now happened. But some people were at work when the evacuation order came. And it was so quickly, because the danger was so high, that they didn't have time to get back to their homes, to get some belongings, important stuff, like family heirlooms and stuff. So I feel for them. This is horrible, horrible. But, you know, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, guys. If you watch this, there's a way to get out of this. Your life is the most important thing. And what is the situation right now? They didn't expect this. The officials are saying, well, we had it in our worst case scenario. That's why we're able to react to it right now. But we didn't think that this would happen. We have never seen anything like this before. Yes, there have been landslides in the past where really a lot of over 400 people were lost. I have show you a list in my last video that compares all the landslides. But what has happened here is unique. So they say, the officials, the disaster management says, we've never seen anything like this before. We were shocked. The officials say, we're speechless. We're hurting. This is really terrible. But you have to say the authorities are doing a great job taking care of the displaced people that have lost everything, not only homes, businesses, hotels, but the situation is not okay. There's still a dire situation. More evacuations today, 2 more villages, because the river, the big landslide, it's like 2 kilometers long and it's very, very tall. All these rocks and glacier remains have blocked the river. And that lake that has formed, this is a danger for the municipalities downstream. So this morning at 7:30, the officials have released the latest statement. They are saying, so far the communities downstream have been spared. This might sound as a good thing, but you have to find out the reason why they have been spared. Due to the water and the debris that was dammed up by this rock glacier slide in Blatten, there was no erosion in the communities downstream during the night into Thursday because everything is blocked. The lake is still forming. So it's not that this mass of water that is collecting there is now flooding downstream. That's not yet the case. The authorities plan to hold another media conference later today. Of course, I will report about this too, to give us further information about that disaster that is unfolding before our eyes. So the situation of the disaster Thursday morning local time in Switzerland, authorities are giving us an explanation why they have evacuated the villages, the communities of Vila and Kippel that are bordering Blatten. Blatten is destroyed. It's covered. It's gone, unfortunately. So also the authorities have evacuated 16 people. They're saying this is a precautionary measure against a flood so that the houses would be empty in case the river Lonsa, that's the name of the river, these dams that have been formed by that rock slide erode. And they will erode at some point. The river will find a way through. The question is, it probably will start slow, but then it'll break a larger hole. And then Depending on how large that lake is, it will flood. We have seen this in British Columbia last year. I have reported about this. Same thing has happened, but there were no villages that were at risk. So behind all this debris in Blatten, this lake has formed and is still forming because the river is not stopping to flow. And the sad thing is there were some houses that had been spared by this disastrous landslide. That was coming down, by the way, like the pictures that came to mind when I saw this, it wasn't smoke, I know, but when I saw this cloud, this massive, aggressive, moving debris cloud, it reminded me of 9/11, guys. What do you think? It was really shocking when I saw that. And we know it was like snow, water, glacier, a whole glacier, and a lot of rocks mixed coming down at full force on that poor village of Blatten. But the clouds it made when it came down, this one photographer that was able to capture this video, he gave an interview and he said, wow, at some point I saw this coming towards me. I packed up and I ran. I ran back to my car, getting away from this, although he was on the other side of the valley. But he saw this monstrosity coming towards him. So sadly, what we saw still standing yesterday, the regional command staff said Thursday morning, we assume the entire village is now destroyed. And it breaks my heart because I was hoping, okay, there's a few houses left. At least a few people have the hope that eventually they will be able to get back to their homes and gather their belongings. And now this. It's so sad. They're planning in a few hours more flights to surveil the area to get a better picture. This is so new. They need to orient themselves and want to observe the debris that has fallen into the valley and determine what further developments might mean for the rest of the valley, especially because of that dammed river. There's a local resident that is missing, sadly. The search for the missing resident is ongoing. They're using thermal imaging, but so far it has been unsuccessful. Hopefully this resident is somewhere else and not under this rock debris, because I was so much hoping everyone was evacuated, so at least nobody was lost. I so hope they will find this resident. There's further operations to find him are planned. That's what the regional correspondent has told everyone. And also the army. They called the army. You know, they called the army when they kind of didn't know yet what they would need it for, but definitely to clear pathways. I said it in my last videos. The amount that came down here, they need 500,000 40-ton trucks to truck this away. If you would line the trucks up, it would be 9,000 kilometers from Zurich to Beijing. So the first vehicle from the advanced detachment of the Swiss Army Disaster Relief Battalion are now in sight and they're ready to act. Let's talk about the other evacuated villages for a second. So in Blatten, the Lonza River and the Gisentella stream are dammed behind this massive debris that is lying there. And the municipality of Kippel has announced yesterday at 10:30 p.m. that's impossible to predict how the water will flow, and that makes it so dangerous. So there is a risk that any heavy runoff from the Lonza River could lead to lateral erosion in the riverbed. And as a precautionary measure, some potentially endangered buildings in the affected municipalities of Vila and Kippel had been evacuated. They only had 2 hours to evacuate. And they said the affected people should report to the municipal office and state their new whereabouts. The municipalities, and I say again, they do such a great job. They're offering support to those affected, and they have published maps of the affected areas. So we see this here as well. We see Kippel and we see the river, and then the red stripes is the potential hazardous area should there be more water come down. And then we see Vila There's only the left side of the river in that map that seems to be at risk, not the other side. In this valley, in Valais, the people are used to crisis, but they're saying not to such big ones. A member of the Council of State, and by the way, they all came down. They all came down to support the people of Blatten. So that was really beautiful to see. So Beat Rieder, he told the press, he said, it's an event like no other. He said, I was just on the way home to the neighboring town of Vila, and I've spoken to several Blatten residents, and they're obviously deeply, deeply shocked. And in Valais, people are used to crisis, but not this big. Also, what they point out, Meteo Swiss already has 2 programs for monitoring natural hazards, but they say we probably need to monitor the mountains more closely, and you should use satellites. I've reported about this new technology that can track movements of fault lines like the San Andreas fault, but also underwater fault lines that are hard to surveil with local stations. The width of a hair, they can do this 24/7. If the San Andreas fault moves with the width of a hair, they know it. And for a mountain like this, and you see the time lapse, how the mountain started to crack when it first began, this is crucial. So the crashed material that has come down on Blatten, I mean, the before and the after pictures are just, it's just hurting. It's 2 kilometers long, and it's also 200 meters wide. It's really, really wide. The head of the Natural Hazard Department has said, we saw this extreme case only in our simulation, and that's why we were able to evacuate beforehand, but we didn't think that this would happen. And also the debris that is blocking the river is 50 to 200 meters wide, also a huge dam. What is so frustrating, just yesterday I reported parts of the glacier started to break and they started to come down as avalanches with the rocks and the glacier. And they have these natural barriers there, like the berms for avalanches and stuff like this to protect the village. And they were holding. They were actually quite happy that they would divert everything that was flowing down from the mountain. And then, the debris that was coming down stopped 300 to 400 meters from the village of Blatten. And they did expect, if it comes further down, it will block the river, but they didn't expect it to come down all at once that violently. And, you see pictures here where it stopped, and they were hoping that this would remain like this. But then a few hours later, at 11:21 a.m. on Wednesday, the regional command staff said for the first time the debris has now overflowed the dam in the Lötschental Valley and has entered the Lonza River already. The side basins of the protective dam are full, and they also said there that there's a risk of further landslides to the right and to the left. They hoped that it would come in smaller portions to be better absorbed. But when this, how do you call this, tornado of a landslide came, there was absolutely no chance. If you see what's coming down on Wednesday morning, that was captured by the drones. So they already declared, they called it a special situation, not like an emergency declaration, but something like this, in order to react as quickly as possible and deploy resources more quickly if necessary. So great job, they prepared. And they knew, and they said it, part of the Birch Glacier is at risk of collapsing and could trigger large-scale debris flow or landslides and damage the houses in the village. And then at 3:30 p.m., the reporter that I mentioned observed this, you can call it a mountain glacier demolition, because that's what it looks like, a demolition cloud. If there's a high rise that you let explode and it sinks into it, this cloud, that's what it looks like. That's why I said 9/11. These traveling clouds that seem to follow you or chase you when that happened, there was an earthquake, 3.1 magnitude. Can you believe? This is how powerful it was. Also, the power went out briefly. That's what the reporter said, who was looking at that disaster. Big, loud rumbling was heard. And imagine if you really hear this like the reporter heard it, it's just overwhelming, I would say. And then only a few minutes later at 4:04 p.m., it was clear. This landslide, the destruction from this thing, is bigger than any previous one. And the reporters that were in conference rooms, they heard the rumbling. People reported on the streets that they felt, in other villages, they felt the earth shaking and rumbling. Like a thunder. They said something's going on. And the reporters in the rooms, when the power went out for a few seconds, they said we knew something was coming. It became very hectic from then on. Collapse is larger than any collapse to date. Blatten is probably hit. And yes, it was. This picture here, it's a mixture of ice, rock, and snow that has crashed towards the valley after the major collapse. And you see how it has filled up the valley. And we're talking that, I don't know, they haven't really released an official number how tall this is, but I think it's at least like 30 meters, 100 feet. I think even more. I think probably way more. And then 4:13 p.m., the regional command staff confirmed the debris has reached Blatten. The large glacier collapse appears to be the major event that they feared. Reports went out from the officials. They said it's very dire. The situation is very dire. The unbelievable has happened. That's what they said. And then they said, we need to get a picture. Our thoughts are with you, with everyone who owns or has a home there. The residents do have a community app where they were getting the latest information. Must have been heartbreaking. One witness that saw the mountain, the glacier, coming down said, shortly after 3:15 p.m., the first signs of this demolition, how they call it, began on the mountain. Large boulders thundered down with loud noise. Tree trunks, gravel, and sand, everything was pushed into the village. And then for a long time, these patches of fog had somehow obscured the view of the mountain. And after it cleared up, people were able to see the extent of the damage a little better. And they quickly were sending drones up to show the extent of that demolition. And also the river, you see where it's blocked. You see that brownish mix there. You can't even identify rocks anymore, but you see the blue of the river. So what you see there is not the river, it's the debris, and you see how it blocks the river. And I mean, you have to imagine that glacier collapse caused a magnitude 3.1 earthquake. Usually we see these earthquakes when the volcanoes want to erupt. It's crazy. A resident of Vila has said, and yeah, I guess that's true. He said the wait for what could happen is over. For Vila, not so much. He has to recognize that because now the Lonsa River could flood Vila. One of my viewers wrote me a comment. Thank you so much for that. That's an insight, a local resident from the area. And I really appreciate that. And I want to share this with you, what she said. Brigitte, I have to say thank you for reporting us what's going on. And she said that she's been following my channel for several months now, and I never imagined that our valley, the Lötschental, would be featured. Yeah, I'm very sorry that it is. It's such a beautiful area. I've been in Switzerland all my life, from a kid on until later, and I love it so much, especially the mountains. I was always playing after the movie Heidi. I don't know if you know that. I felt like Heidi in Switzerland, and so that's why it's really touching. And she said, like 3 years ago, I purchased a business in Kippel, and She said the Lötschental, with its 4 villages, is often called the Magic Valley, one of the most beautiful valleys in Switzerland, still largely untouched by mass tourism. It's a rare place where the harmony between people and nature is still alive. But we don't know what the future holds for the valley. In many ways, it reflects what is happening to our planet. If humanity, and that's beautiful, doesn't wake up to the need to respect Mother Earth and open our hearts to one another, we risk losing our civilization. And I think that is so true. That is so true if we see what's happening with wars and other craziness on our planet right now. So I have to say, I want to close this video with that comment, but I will keep you updated as things unfold with the river and as there's more pictures coming in and we get an even better picture how Blatten looks. Whatever you can still see, there is not much. Thanks for watching, guys. If you want to know the full story, check out my other videos that I made about this incident, or subscribe to my channel so that you get the updates. But there's also other stuff. The super volcano Campi Flegrei in Italy is rumbling. Many places that are ahead of disaster, and in Italy it's very, very dire. Check out the video. The latest data for me, it's the most worrying, like scaring, alarming, I have to say. For me, this is like this report that came out, the study. It yells, get out, get to safety. And we have seen here on a small scale, it's a small village, like 300 people. We're talking about over 6 million people in the Naples area in Italy. But what the Swiss officials and the residents have shown us here in Blatten and the Lötschental is how good they evacuated, how quickly they followed the evacuation orders so that everyone was safe. Because disaster can hit quicker than you think. We have the tendency, and I saw it in the comments, you're overreacting, fear-mongering, when I said I think the whole thing can come down. Unfortunately, it did now. So you have to take warning signs seriously. Better safe than sorry, and don't listen to people who play the risk down, especially if they're not the ones that live there. So my heart goes out to you if everyone's watching from the affected area. Leave us a comment. Let us know if we can do anything to help as a group. And I hope to see you in the next video. Safe and sound, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye. And if you want to support the channel, I have a Buy Me a Coffee site. The link is in the description. Thank you.